Hey,
May the
hey.
courts be with you.
May the course be. Of
Woohoo!
course, of course. Hey, hey, this is Shaun with the Atlanta Tennis Podcast, powered by GoTennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com, where you can find deals on equipment. You can sell your own merchandise if you sell to the Atlanta area or anywhere really, but mostly the Atlanta area. Let us know. We can help you get your products out. So, in this case, today is our 10 minutes of tennis. And in this case, 10:04 today, but that's all right. We are on island time because we are talking with Justin Yeo, world-renowned tennis pro, Australian in Puerto Rico. Justin Yeo, today we are talking about the analytical mind versus the visual mind and what that could mean for my game or your game, in this case, the listener. So, first, define the analytical mind versus the visual mind, and then we'll dive in.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to throw it back at you. What's your interpretation?
My interpretation of the analytical mind versus the visual mind.
There you go.
I think I'm a little stuck on this one because I think I'm a bit of both. So for
Yep.
me, since I haven't necessarily studied this like you have, for me,
Yeah.
I understand coming out of schooling how this would look for me to be able to say, okay, I need to understand that the elbow goes here or the shot needs to go there in this order, the chess style of looking at something, my brain does. But also, if I don't see it, I don't quite wrap my head around it in the same way. So maybe I'm viewing it differently than you do, but I feel like I'm a little bit of both.
Yeah. Well, let's make it probably a little easier. But an analytical mind tends to be a mechanical person. So they break down things in mechanics. They want to know, step one to
On this
step
one, because I
10.
think
Um, Commonly, a visual person, you only give them two or three per person. But a mechanical or analytical mind can tend to look at things in more of a mechanical way. And you have to learn to express that way because if you're trying to demo, uh, they're not getting the mechanics that they're looking for. Some people really want to know the bevel, where their hand should finish, where their elbow should be, where their internal rotation of their shoulder, where their foot should be. They want to know these 10 things like to hit a ball, right? Whereas I'm the complete opposite. You show me a demo and I just do it. But when we say, you know, everyone can argue, but they say 75% of the world are visual learners. Hence why we have so much advertising and it's worth so much money because we absorb everything visually mostly. Um, but it is an interesting concept that you can be talking to someone who is could be I claim them as usually accountants, not to you know uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking discreetly. It's not a certain character about them, but they're very analytical. They're very numbers. They're very mechanical. An engineer, same thing. They break things down. They look at things in multiple micro things that most of us don't think of. But that's what makes them who they are. But when we're talking tennis, sometimes if you're talking to a person like that, try to think about how you express teaching them because you could be more successful or in the end they're a lot happier with your style of expression and that's sort of where it comes down to analytical and visual. There is a middle ground, like you said. Some people like just enough mechanics and just enough demo. Um, so it really is an interesting concept between the two. But what I've noticed over the years from a lot of experience is you can find sometimes people on complete both sides of the spectrum, and if you break that, like find that out early, you can control the way you teach it.
And
So
so is this going to combine with the big five personality traits as the humans to where we've got our different types of how we are as people? Because in this case, this would change how I would make my initial assumption in working with males versus females in some cases to be able to say, okay, make that a little bit of assumption and say, is this the way to go? But from a coaching point of view, it's probably easier to just ask But then that sounds too easy because maybe most people don't know the type of learner they are.
Yeah. So you bring up a different point when you talk male female, right? Because female tends to have a lot more elements going on within their thought pattern than a male does. And that's again not saying men are,
Simpler. Men can be simpler. See ball, hit ball a little bit.
yes, I'm not going to talk about IQs and,
No, no, no.
and smartness and dumbness. What I'm saying
No,
is
not relevant here.
our brains operate differently, and that's been scientifically proven.
Right.
And so a female will tend to rotate on a lot of different elements. So in tennis, it's best to try to limit those and keep it simple because they already are what we would call analytical because they're looking for so many details. But if those details are circling all the time, then decisions aren't made. Then it's hard to pick one or two versus all 10. And that's where the confusion comes on a tennis court for a female. On the male side, sometimes they need a little more detail. So it makes them actually do the extra parts that we really should do versus just smack the ball, so to speak. So, again, it's a balancing act between visual and analytical, mechanical versus fluid. I've probably based my whole career around trying to make people fluid because I think if they're fluid, it gives them more chances of playing tactical. It gives them more chances of working on their perception of what's happening on the court and how they should play. It also gives them a chance to think more external while they're playing versus internal thinking, breaking down the stroke while the ball's coming. You see, so I focus heavily on being fluent, but I've met a lot of analytical minds, like a very good friend of mine here. There's a hedge fund guy, and man, every time I talk to him, he's giving me 10 things about what he's working on in his forehand. I'm like, sorry, man, you need to swing and hit the ball,
But in that case, it's a little bit of changing how someone is naturally. And maybe that's one of the things we like about tennis and we like about sport, whether it's the coaching side to say, oh, this is fun. We get to take someone who is one way and try to encourage them to be a little bit different. But then as a person, sometimes it allows us to be outside of ourselves a little bit. Say, you know what? I'm normally really structured, but for me, I can tell what kind of person I am. I can tell my personality traits by the way I play tennis because there is zero structure to my tennis.
Yep.
And that's very similar to everything else is just artistic. I'm going to find a way to get it done, but it's not just linear in that 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of way.
Right. And I mean, you can look at it even just from the player side. Nick Kyrgios couldn't be analytical, but if you try to structure things too much, it takes away the fun. And maybe that's also where his brain works, is that he just wants to enjoy, flip, and have a good time. And that's where his brain can handle. And then when you look at people like Sinner a little bit, I would say more, Alcaraz, some of these other players pay a little more attention to detail, that you can offer the details. And when they talk about the match. They talk about how they structured things and whatever. You talk to Kyrgios, he won't tell you how many unforced errors he made or whatever. He just said, I sucked today.
Felt good today or felt bad.
Yeah. So again, that's a little bit more.
But that doesn't mean he doesn't know the unforced errors. It's possible that he knows them.
Yeah.
And it's more of just kind of a cloudy information that just says, overall bad or overall good.
Yeah. And that, again, it just gives you a bit analytical. We have a bit of a balance of both, because if some people pay attention to detail and like the detail and want to respond or change it or learn and grow, then I would say they have a little bit of that same, the mix of both. Because if they have all the way on the other side, man, that's a tough one to play this sport if you're totally analytical. And that's what my buddy did.
Exactly.
He's in a battle of hitting 20,000 balls a day. He's on the court for hours and hours and hours because he's mechanically trying to get this right. And I'm just going, mate, you're killing your shoulder. You're doing so many things. The looseness of how he hits the ball, you can tell there is none, because he's mechanically thinking so much as he hits the ball. Yeah. So elasticity almost doesn't exist in his swinging,
Yeah, and in that case, you need to kind of, as a coach, we're encouraging you. So Justin, if I can ask for one thing, the coaches, we know we've got to figure out how to speak to the player. We need to be able to talk to them where they are and maybe drag them out from inside the box periodically. But speaking to the player, Justin, if you're going to give them a little bit of ability to maybe know yourself a little better as a player, if you're going to give us a little temet nosce here and say, know yourself, how do I find out a little bit more about myself and my analytical versus visual?
If you watch TV or someone does something in front of you and you just seem to be able to repeat it straight away, it gives you a real understanding that you're a big visual learner. And there's a real clear identifier, right? That you can demo in front of someone, and all of a sudden the first 3 strokes they do exactly the way you showed them, and then they go away and start hitting the way they were. It still shows that the more there's demo and the more freely demo or shadow swings are happening, the more chances they have of replicating what you really want them to do. On the other side, on the analytical side, I actually would say that if my buddy, if I knew him, I mean, we're really close, but I don't work with him because he's a head case. But what he needs to spin the analytical side into it is learn the structure of the game more and put that breakdown of all these things he wants to know, put it down into tactical and structure and strategy and trying to put his head out that way so he can look at the finer details that teach, like let him play the game in a more mechanical way versus stroke wise. So I would say someone's not very visual and they're very mechanical, try to put the mechanics out towards the court versus internally into their stroke.
Got it. I love it. Justin, thank you so much. This has been 10 Minutes of Tennis. Justin, we'll see you next week.
See you, man. I'm still out here surfing.
Take care. Thanks so much.
See ya.